Elon Musk has been helping blind monkeys. No, that's not a Twitter joke. It's a Neurolink thing. Wes Roth has just reviewed Devin AI's for-hire job posting in what I think might be his most sarcastic video yet.
A very large collection of cans of worms and a whole bunch of can openers.
Like, I think it's dry humor, but it could just be like how he is, you know? GPT-4 is now busting down doors, blasting enemies in the 1993 DOS version of Doom. David Lee just got access to Tesla's full self-driving end-to-end AI version 12.
All right, tad bit jittery getting out, but it's okay.
Famous researcher Andrew Ng predicts that agentic workflows is going to be the 2024 AI buzzword of the year. The CEO of Stability AI just left to pursue a decentralized AI project, and we're told that has nothing to do with all his best talent leaving for Microsoft or the fact that they ran out of money, but it probably has to do with both of those things. And the AI OG DeepMind co-founder Mustafa Suleyman is now at Microsoft. Dun dun dun. But first, coming to you while humans are still the dominant intelligence on the planet. According to Alan's conservative countdown to AGI, we're still at 72%, so there's room to breathe. In fact, I'm hoping that we can only go up 2% this month because we already had Anthropic's Claude 3 Opus and the embodiment from Figure 01. So if we're lucky, there won't be any big announcements like that until at least next month. So Neuralink revealed this friendly human who has the device actually implanted in his brain, moving a mouse cursor and playing chess.
I actually stayed up until, like 6 a.m. playing Civilization 6.
Right, which sounds like an amazing breakthrough, but according to this Reddit user, it sounds like Civilization kind of sucks, so hopefully his quality of life didn't go down because of that. But what's going on in humans is impressive, but what's going on in monkeys? Elon Musk's Neuralink has now taken blind monkeys and given them, quote, early Nintendo graphics-like vision. Listen, I remember playing Chrono Trigger. I didn't care about the graphics. But lucky for these monkeys, just like the history of video games, the graphics are going to get better and better. And ultimately, they may both exceed normal human vision. But of course, this claim wasn't really like a white paper or anything, so there are some important questions that are left unanswered. Like, were the monkeys born blind, or did they lose their vision later? And if it was later, what caused them to lose their vision? Better not be Neuralink. How much of their optic nerve was still intact? So did the company have to start from scratch, or did they reconnect the pathways between their eyes and the brain? What do you mean that they could eventually exceed normal human vision? Maybe that's the next thing they can do with Neuralink, is hook it up to a large language model, because I have so many questions for these monkeys. But look, if you're the kind of person that's into believing whatever rich people say blindly, don't worry, because no monkey has died or ever been seriously injured by a Neuralink device, according to Musk himself. But as Futurism points out, given the ample evidence to the contrary, his claims are anything but convincing to the majority of people. Next up, let's talk about Wes Roth and Ethan Mollick. Okay? So Ethan, super important, super smart guy on Twitter, does all sorts of awesome AI stuff. So he uses Devin AI, this is a new word to me, but the Agentic system, which is a multi-agent system, to go out there on the internet and actually put up a job posting, get paid for his work, do something worth getting paid for, and then give him the money. All right, now I wouldn't say it was without any hurdles. The first problem that Devin AI had was that when he actually went to go post for a job, he read the rules of the subreddit, which I know we're all supposed to do, but not everybody does. And for some reason, according to this subreddit, you can only self-promote or solicit feedback on Saturdays. Smart enough to read the rules, smart enough to know that the day that they posted it today is not Saturday, so he's unable to create the post. Of course, he wants to follow the rules, like that makes sense, but what's going on here? So he asks Ethan, do you want me to find another subreddit, or should I just wait till Saturday? I don't know what to do. Then I like how Ethan just wrote, pick another subreddit then, go just solve it, So here's where I need a little bit of your help. Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to play a quick clip of what Wes Roth said. Tell me if this is sarcasm or not.
And then Ethan continues, agents are going to open a whole bunch of cans of worms. That's a interesting way of putting that. Yeah, because this isn't just a can of worms. This is a very large collection of cans of worms and a whole bunch of can openers. So
why do you throw in a whole bunch of can openers? I think that's his humor. So long story short, it needs some API access. It kind of works. It kind of doesn't. It's not quite there yet. However, it kind of makes you wonder if somewhere behind the scenes at Baidu or at Gemini under Google's vision, or at OpenAI at Microsoft's thing, or maybe in DARPA or maybe some other country, have they built some kind of a scalable system that is already out there, maybe making money, or maybe it will be out there soon, but the general public won't know of it at first, at least for a while? Well, those are some really fascinating topics that Wes brought up in this video, and kind of got me thinking that, yeah, at some point, I think it will happen, and some company will get a whole bunch of money, and then we'll find out a bit later how they got so rich. Probably not going to know until like the quarterly 10K comes out and the shareholders are like, holy crap, like this company way beat estimates and expectations, and they're like, oh yeah, we had this ace up our sleeve that we didn't tell you guys about, but now it's exploited, so we'll tell you about it. Thanks for the deep dive. So let's jump over to GPT-4. Will it run Doom? And actually Mario 64. I'm going to talk about two projects here that kind of went after the same thing. Okay, now the first one released on March 8th is this paper, Will GPT-4 Run Doom? Wait, what do you mean? Like GPT-4 is not Turing complete, it can't run any processes, it's a large language model. It's got like word tokens and a latent space. Like, doesn't make sense. So a Python script, a little bit of prompt engineering, and a little bit of sending screenshots off for it to understand what's happening in the game, and you cobble it together and you kind of have something that can control a video game. Imagine going back in time, grabbing a Super Nintendo controller, but it has a little firmware inside of it that runs an entire large language model and can control the buttons on the controller. And then from what's on screen every, let's say, 15 seconds, it takes a screenshot and sends that off to GPT to ask what to do. Those replies that are in English, human readable English, get translated into the directional pad. So you can pre-prompt it and say, return what the character should do, but if the character should like walk forward, actually say the word up, or like actually write the JavaScript, or probably like the Fortran or whatever that would be actually the up button, and then execute that on the controller so the character actually moves on the screen. What programming language was the Super Nintendo built on? Well, I was way off on Fortran. SNES was developed using an assembly language closely related to, raw machine code. They gave it direct control of the hardware. Anyways, back to the paper, it could play the game. I mean, sometimes it did some weird stuff, but it had general reasoning about what was going on. So it wasn't superhuman, it got lost, but even though it had some planning issues, it kind of shows like how powerful these tools can be when they're just mixed together in weird ways. But of course, a paper like this, you're dying to actually see what it looks like, right? Well, luckily this guy, Josh Bickett, has you covered because he created this GitHub repository called Multi-modal Gamer. And it's a Python script that you can run with a Mario 64 emulator. Okay, so here's the system prompt just to give you some context. You're playing, blank game, so it just knows whatever game it's playing. Your goal is the goal. And then you can act by using the controller. Here's some options on the controller: right, up, down, left, attack, jump. All right, so what you get is this. Look, Mario, I don't know why he shakes his head all the time or why he can't just like jump on that Goomba, but it's just pretty much how nobody actually plays the game. It kind of looked like it couldn't do anything. Hey, some news I cover is more impressive than others, okay? Like, think conceptually here, not outcome related. David Lee, what up? He's back.
Hey, it's Dave.
If you follow David, he's been through some hard times, so I'm glad to see him back on screen. And 7 days ago, he got the newest version of Tesla's self-driving, meaning there's cameras, there's a big artificial intelligent network, and then there's the steering wheel. Before, it was like some regular code, some decision-making code, some AI models, and like all these little patches put together. So in theory, it was actually less code. However, when I updated my Tesla, it said there were 300,000 lines of new code. But as far as I understand, that's just to protect everything that's outside this AI bubble. Now, if you're interested in this, you have to look up a guy named James Duma. He's been on David's podcast and his channel a few times, but he also goes out and like talks on other podcasts. I would love to get him on this podcast. I've actually reached out to him through email, but like we'll see if that happens or not. But he is so well versed in how the AI actually fits into these systems. So that's kind of like where I got most of my information. But here's some real world examples of how it works.
Wipers fixed or not? Like, I don't know, man. They should be wiping more effectively.
Not surprisingly, I feel the exact same way in my car. In Las Vegas, it doesn't rain that much, but when it does, I'm like, bro, this is like, I'm turning the windshield wiper on. In fact, I actually remember in the previous versions, maybe like 10 or maybe even 9, they actually had an entire neural network that was using the 2 cameras at the very top there above the rearview mirror to look for rain and to try to sense it along with a water sensor. So they had an entire neural network trying to figure out when it's raining. It's kind of hard to actually tell. So I still manually click the voice button and say, Tesla, turn on the windshield wipers. So, something's just not there yet.
Would I have gone here? No, I would have waited. I would have waited also until this white car passes. Now I'm gonna go right after this white car. It doesn't hesitate and it goes right after this white car. It's exactly what a human would have done in that situation. So another good drive.
Okay, so if you want to be a 2024 trendy in AI, you need to know this word. It is agentic. Agentic workflows, they're the bee's knees. What does that mean, you might ask? Well, top researcher Andrew Ng built a whole course around it. And he says perhaps it might be more important than the next generation of foundational models. Yeah, and I think he's kind of right here, because there is a certain magic in compartmentalizing knowledge, specializing in something, and then putting together the right team to solve a problem. It's like building a business, like a company, a board of directors, a government. There's just something more powerful about groups of systems like that that have specialized pieces inside of them. So for example, if you remember back to this Stanford project, imagine each one of these little characters on screen were their own instance of ChatGPT, right? So somebody is like logged into all these accounts and they have told each of them different things. Like this guy in the middle, you're the CEO. Like these two over here, you're the lazy ones that try to distract everybody. These three to code up the project, these four to test it, and if it doesn't work right, send it back to coding. So it bounces back and forth between coding and testing for a long time, and eventually when it's done testing, boom, you get the document team to like document how it works, maybe another team to like put up the website, maybe another team to do the marketing, maybe this little guy, the CTO, like walks around and does all his thing. And another throwback to Wes Roth, he's actually ran this on his computer and talks about how impressed he was when it actually went past testing and made it to documentation after he thought it was stuck bouncing between coding and testing. And it was just fascinating, freaky cool, and fascinating. But what if in the future, if you have like a Optimus robot or a Figure 01 robot walking around your house, inside of its brain, it literally is like the movie Inside Out with all those like emotions, except they're like teams of people that are doing things. Like one agent might be the one that you're talking to, but that would be more like the final product being presented to us. Like we talk to it and we're like, think we're talking to a robot, but inside the robot's head, there's all these teams, maybe thousands of them, trying to decide like, okay, I work on whether or not when I'm interacting with the human, if I understand their emotions. Another one's like based on humor or something like that. I'm like, it's getting me thinking like how weird this whole thing is going to be. Imagine something like a military drone, right? One of those like airplanes that might be able to make like a strike strategically or whatever. If the military says like, go hit this strike, but also all these agents, say like 100 of them are inside the brain of the drone, and it is supposed to hit the target, but it also has to think like, okay, one of us is going to be like looking out for any civilians. The other one is going to be thinking about the national security interests of like the US government. Another one is going to be thinking like, okay, this is from an optics point of view, what happens if we make a mistake, and we're going to like take a guess as to how risky this is going to be. All these factors that the actual military is like, what, like they'll mimic whatever the actual military's kind of roles are, their agents actually think about, and put that in there so that if they try to do it and it doesn't decide on its own to like make that attack, they can probably talk to it and say like, how is all this decision broken down? Like they can go look at the logs and see what each of the different agents said and did, and the interplay that happened behind it, to give some, you know, real world context to these decisions. It'd be really powerful. And it also kind of gets at the heart of one of the problems, especially with the military thing, but in a lot of these models, in medicine also, education also, when it makes a decision and it's a black box, it's unknown like why it did it, because we're like, oh, I don't know, because there's like billions of parameters and that was just the output. It's like, now at least we have little things that we still are consider black boxes, the individual agents, but together we can at least, like a group of humans, have some kind of understanding about how the whole decision came together and make some tweaks to it. Anyhow, Andrew Ng's totally right about this. We had a firing today of a big open source project at the CEO position. Stability AI CEO Emad is now done. Or I mean, he left, I guess he left to do decentralized AI, which is something I really want to know more about, but that was just kind of like a throwaway line. I think there's some really good conversations we could have about that, but for another day. And here's my thoughts about it. Like I listened to Matt Wolf's take, I saw some people on Reddit, and I'll kind of cobble together some of the thoughts that stuck with me. One is building a foundational model is super expensive, and I don't know how you recoup the costs, obviously, when you're putting it out there and you're not Meta, Facebook, and you have a use case for building a community around it to kind of produce better results for your products, the other products that make money. Or you have to build some kind of enterprise thing where you're, you know, big companies that like Oracle and stuff, maybe they throw these things in their, you know, servers to generate stuff for their customers, and you're got this very lucrative contract with like a very rich company that you're tied to, like the way some of those Linux companies built out their systems. He also might have actually had the right mentality and they were kind of on the long runway, but you just can't keep talent without insane budgets, and Microsoft and OpenAI are able to just come in there and like grab them up. Because every one of his engineers had to log into their email at home on their personal time and see LinkedIn requests from some major companies. And it's just tough. In fact, we'll see in a minute with Mustafa Suleyman, who was the creator. In fact, I'll just go into this now. He was the co-founder of DeepMind. DeepMind is like decades old. It is Demis Hassabis, who's now the CEO, who controlled it and then sold it to Google, but stayed separate and now has been integrated because of Gemini. It's a whole thing. But that was the most amazing, most talented AI company that has progressed in just the most insane way ever. And Mustafa Suleyman was there for the whole trip, but then he recently left to go create a new company, which is called Inflection. And they had some great talent. He was able to pull a lot of people from DeepMind. Also, he was smart and connected enough to bring a lot of great people over there. And then he just kind of, quote, sold his company to Microsoft. Microsoft gave him and all of the entire staff $650 million to hire them all. And there's a bunch of reasons why, maybe optics wise that makes sense. This is going to come down to a two-party system in America. It's going to just be Google and Microsoft at the end of the day. And I got a feeling a bunch of people will fight for third place, but I don't know if it'll be as diverse as we hoped it would be a couple of years ago. Guess actually is that Google still pulls this off. I know I'm kind of in the minority now, and they're the number one company. But it's very likely, and I could easily be wrong, that Microsoft takes this whole thing. And there's really good reasons why Microsoft is ahead and is going to stay ahead. But if it does go Google, Microsoft, I think it's going to go, that's going to be Coke and Pepsi. And then the rest is just going to be it'll be worth a lot of money because AI is just insane. But I mean, IBM, the Grok and what's happening with Tesla, there's something there that could be the third place position. But also everything that's happening over with Meta and Mark, I think it's Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk just fighting for third place, really, at least in the US. And then I think there's some significant stuff happening in China too that kind of needs to live in its own category. But a little more context about what I was talking about with Inflection. The bot that they created called Pi, which was, very competitive, but I could see why they don't want to compete anymore, is going to still survive, and it's going to be on the right, it's going to survive, and probably part of this whole Microsoft thing is to move it over to Azure, where they've already built out these GPUs to handle everything that OpenAI is doing. But realistically, it seems like if I was OpenAI, I'd be like, hey, dude, come on down here and check out what we got. Throw your data in our system. How did you tweak and fine-tune your system? Bring your engineers over. Let's see if we can get GPT-5 with some extra tweaks before it comes out. Today I'm going to make a prediction about soccer, something I know very little about, especially not in the US soccer market. But the soccer team, Liverpool, I think they're going to win. What's the MLS in Europe? Not the World Cup or whatever the biggest thing is in Europe that they play in. Liverpool wins it all 2025. That's my prediction. How could I be so confident about a sport I know so little about? Well, DeepMind is now helping them actually predict what play the coach is going to say the team should do. And listen, you don't doubt Google DeepMind. When they come to protein folding, they walked into an industry they knew nothing about, crushed it. We've seen them do this with games. This is literally a human game, and it can make predictions about how to play it. The coach on this team is going to be miles ahead. So this system, it works by analyzing corner kicks, set plays, all the stuff that happens in soccer, and it's going to figure out to a superhuman degree what play to call. And if this is a top talent team, if the coach is making the right calls with superhuman intelligence, and these guys are just professionals acting on those coaching cues, good chance that they have an edge over every other major league team. I think this is really interesting. I hope to see them win. All right, moving on to the research part. Let's look at Be-Your-Outpainter. It's a mastering video outpainting through input-specific adaptation paper. Outpainting meaning you take a photograph of something and you're like, oh, I didn't capture the whole room, and you just expand the canvas out, and in a photograph it just adds the rest. So you've seen people take the Mona Lisa and then they just pull it out and it fills in the rest of the room that the Mona Lisa in theory could be sitting in, and it's in the same style and it looks like the same photo. But of course, if you do that to video, it's a bit different because you have 30, 60 frames per second. If you expand each one, it's always it's kind of confabulating, it's hallucinating, kind of something that feels like it would fit, but it's not going to be the same every frame, so that's not going to work, right? Well, this new model is doing that to video, and it's taking, for example, the first frame and saying, okay, so this is our objective truth of how the room should look. It's called a prior, in Bayesian terms, and then it's going to keep using that in each frame afterwards to try to keep it consistent and coherent. So it's going to say like what's important, right? So if this is the if I'm the Mona Lisa and then it's expanded out and there's a table next to her and it has a vase on it, it's going to say, okay, I understand the vase is the primary object. This thing is more important than the other parts that were generated. So let's focus in on what is a vase, what do the mechanics of a vase look like, and now we're animating a vase. So now phase 2 is about acknowledging that this vase exists. It's got 3 dimensions, it can break, and if all of a sudden in the video of Mona Lisa, she like puts her hand out and knocks it over, it needs to now break and fall off the table. So the paper is really innovative. A lot of people seem to be really impressed with this because it includes these innovative strategies for adding spatial awareness. And because it's a diffusion model, it's got an innovative way to add noise to actually make the processing faster than it would be. It would be a very computationally heavy process without this. Yeah, and all in all, this paper, which can be the acronym MOTIA, which is mastering the video outputting through input-specific adaptation, is just a big step forward and a technologically challenging thing to solve, and they're making good progress on it. Okay, so you see this little anime guy doing some sick sword play. It has to expand above and below the frame. Wait, but look at these results. This is pretty neat. Like, you have this source video that doesn't have the extension of the sword, and it does bend if you look really closely. They're a little bit weird, but realistically, if you had taken a vertical, cartoon and you're starting to watch it on a horizontal frame, you switch your phone around or something and it just automatically generated that while you were watching the video, it'd be fine. It would make me much more engaged in the content already, and it's only going to get better from now. In this less cartoony, more realistic guy with a surfboard, you can see that continual trees on the right and the left stay together, for multiple steps. If it's a Instagram square but you want to pull it into a 16:9 vertical, then wow, this woman now has a sunrise above her that seems like it makes sense. Her arm does seem a little weird there, but if your eyes are still focused in on her eyes, because that's the focus of the content, I think you would buy it. Oh, the surfer looks a little busted. That's not working for me. Where's the rest of your surfboard, bro? The cat has probably a longer neck than usual, but it's still cute enough that I don't care. Doing some comparisons with the other options. Animated diff clearly doesn't know what to do with this dog. Magic Edit seems really weird because bricks come out of nowhere. But Motia, the bricks look a little wobbly, but it's pretty good. It's definitely better than the competitors. But yeah, look at this source video and look at Motia. This is just better than, at least if this is the best stuff that there is. I don't know all the models that do this kind of thing, but if Animated Diff or Animated Diff plus ControlNet or Model Scope are your options before this paper, boom, they took a huge progress on this problem. Serious. Well, I was impressed by Google, and they had a paper that came out, actually not a paper, an entire model that they can use to solve geometry problems at a superhuman level. I still have all sorts of trouble understanding how it did it, because I can kind of understand this concept of tokens in a latent space from being words and then eventually being like patches of even video, like the way it works with Sora and coming together. And I can understand all sorts of other patterned things like brainwaves or other languages that it could switch between. But when it comes to visual math problems, there's something about the physics or the geometry that just always felt like it wasn't being captured. So I still don't kind of understand exactly how it does this. So this paper that came out, I found really intriguing. Does your multimodal LLM truly see the diagrams in visual math problems? Okay, so here's what's going on in this problem. There's a debate happening in the space of measuring the LLMs to see how good that they actually are at solving geometry problems. Now, there's an argument to be made that they're actually not as good as we're giving them credit for, because the current benchmarks that we're using to measure them often include excessive visual content that could lead the MLLMs, these multimodal large language models, to deduce answers without truly interpreting the diagrams. Okay? So maybe on one hand, we're just measuring them wrong and they aren't succeeding like we thought they were. So in this paper, MATHVERSE is a new test to start with. It's 2,600 high-quality, multi-subject math problems with varying degree of information content in the diagrams in the first place, creating a total of 15,000 test samples. Now, the magic in this paper is that they're testing whether or not these MLMs can genuinely understand the reason with a visual diagram. And now in the first step, they've set up a better testing environment. And second, they're actually using chain of thought reasoning a better way of evaluation on top of what the output is from the other models that they're testing. So the chain of thought reasoning, which is basically like think step by step, or thinks about step 1 and then step 2 and step 3 and then a new one, think about how those steps fit together to see if it's really a quality answer or not. It's doing something along the lines of that for each of these benchmark measurements. And the TLDR conclusion is that, yeah, they probably weren't being measured very well. These multimodal LLMs are struggling to understand math diagrams. They're relying too heavily on textual cues and sometimes perform better without any visual input. You know what I mean? So if you're performing better without visual input, you're not solving a geometry problem. Like in my head, I've been kind of thinking about this paper, Alpha Geometry, which is the Olympiad level AI system for geometry, and how that would work. And Runway ML now has a new lip sync feature. Okay, and AI Video School did some great comparisons between Pika and Runway, and it's clear, especially if you actually watch this video and listen to the way he talks about it, just all the nuances that he gets into about how Runway is doing it so much better than Pika. And he makes an interesting point in this video, because if you think about the new tool that we talked about in Midjourney that keeps you with character consistency, and then you generate the same character in all these different backgrounds and positions, and then you can bring those into Runway and lip sync over some voice that is either your voice or you generate with 11 Labs or something. Now you're starting to put together maybe a whole movie. Like now you can put together scenes, generate the images for each of the scenes. You can write out the dialogue that's supposed to happen in each of them, put them in here and animate it. And you could put together a very cool little like movie trailer or something. So yeah, I met this guy in Discord that had one of the most interesting metaphors for what we're gonna go through in the Singularity, or at least like the moments leading up to the Singularity that I want to share. But first, I'll give you a quick breakdown of how the stats on my last video did, because I know you guys are super active in helping me try to grow this channel, which I super appreciate. I definitely feel like I need it to be a team effort if I'm ever gonna make a living on this. But I want to say a huge thank you. Not really sure what happened, but I launched this video really late at night, which is actually, I would have thought a bad idea. And I've been kind of avoiding this for a long time, but a lot of times now I'm thinking, heck, why not? Like I'll just launch at midnight because it takes me all day to edit these videos and to film them. And sometimes I'm just like a late night owl and I finally get it finished. And I'm like, why wait a few more hours? The news is just getting older and older. So launch. And at 11 p.m., this video went live and it got to 714 views. Now I haven't cracked, our goal of 1,000. However, that's better than the 461 from 5 days ago, the 556 from 8 days ago, or even the 668 video where I had kind of my like midlife YouTube crisis. And look, the video did way better than average. It made me $10. We got 12 new subscribers. The watch time was way more than usual. And yeah, even the views were kind of hitting the record. So I don't know, I guess maybe it was a late night thing. I'm gonna try it again. Maybe it was just NVIDIA was like real hot right there for a moment. I don't know. So I'm thinking maybe this time you try adding it to the watch later. I guess this video you've already watched, so that wouldn't make sense. But maybe next time when you see a Dylan Curious video in your feed or on your homepage, you could just click like watch later, and then maybe just watch it later or go to it and watch later. But maybe that's a signal. Like if it's saying, oh, wow, these people like this video, and then they put it in their watch later because they didn't want to they wanted more time when they could really think about it and absorb it. Maybe that's a signal to the algorithm that would help get it more impressions and we can kind of ride this little wave. I don't know. That'd be super helpful for me. Maybe put it in the watch later. It's another thing to try. And now that you've stayed with me for my little analytics and like help me plea, I am going to tell you the most interesting metaphor for the AI future that we're about to experience, where things get faster and faster and faster and faster, and then boom, the Singularity hits that I have ever heard. And I need to thank a new friend that I made on Discord, and his name is Payne Strumpet. He said, imagine this. There's a Lego figure that's on the edge of a vinyl record that's spinning around. Imagine a DJ like Tiesto is just playing something very slow, like 10 RPMs, 10 rotations per minute. So it's just like a full, whatever, 8 or 9 seconds each time it goes around. And at this pace, that little Lego character can easily just watch the world go by in real time. They can read the clock as it ticks on the wall. They can catch a decent snippet of what's on TV, just walking at a normal pace. But if the little Lego character that's walking along is also starting to take a few side steps closer and closer to the center of the record as it spins around, the circular path of being closer to the center of where the disc is spinning becomes faster and faster in relation to this little Lego guy, right? So even if the record is still playing the same song at the same speed, just 10 RPMs, because the character took a step towards the center as it was walking, it's now feeling a lot faster under its feet. Like legs and feet need to move faster, 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 right? Now, this record is kind of a metaphor for artificial intelligence. And as we get closer and closer to the center, we're experiencing more and more data coming at us faster and faster and faster. So imagine at this stage, because it's not just like, it's kind of a, you know, it's a metaphor, but imagine also that as you get closer to the center and you're walking faster and faster, time's ticking a little bit faster, the TV show is playing a little bit faster, the world around you is actually going at a faster pace. And as you get closer and closer, especially when you're just like a step away from the little pin that's holding the record in place, even though it's going 10 RPMs, for you, every rotation, like all the way around it, is like faster and faster and faster. Actually, I guess for the metaphor, the character also gets smaller and smaller too as it gets closer, so that the distance, the amount of steps that it takes to go around the outside is also the same amount of steps that it takes to go around the inside, right? So it's just, to me, I can imagine this Lego character, it's looking at the world, it's on the edge of the disc, and then as it goes closer and closer and closer to the record, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and all the knowledge and information that artificial intelligence is around us is the metaphor. It's, you know, learning from each other, it's coming out at a rapid pace. The better a model is, the better it can code the next model, and then the better the model is, and then it can code the next model. Like everything in the whole world, all of us on social media, all of us building products, we're just going faster and faster and faster and faster. And at some point, making articles like this of the news will be probably kind of a joke, right? Like, I could pick 10 articles to tell you every day and I can still make these videos, but realistically, there will be so much to cover. It probably already is like that. To be honest, it is like that. There's so many papers that I have to ignore that nobody ignores. And whatever's in the news cycle is a small fraction of what's really happening as we get closer to not being the dominant intelligence on these evolving, and the entire landscape will become a blur. It'll be just fruitless and pointless and frivolous to try to think that we're on top of it. And the best thing that we can do is humble ourselves up and be like, oh, we've lost control. Hopefully we can use some of that technology to spin up other AIs that can keep monitoring the other AIs and summarizing the progress to us or something. But like, when we're at the center of that record, that little Lego guy is just, he's just going to spin out of control. He's just going to fly off the record. And that's how our future together is going to end.